Interesting.
Thank you for staying with us. We've just finished talking about the focus on youths and innovation, which was the thrust of Mr. Gates' trip to Nigeria and Niger. And the main facilitator of that trip was the Aliko Dangote Foundation. So what Bill Gates came to do is very connected with the work that Aliko Dangote Foundation is doing. And it's my pleasure to welcome the MD and CEO of the foundation, Zuwaira Yusufu, who is going to tell us more about the impacts of the work that the Aliko Dangote Foundation is doing. I'm sure some of it is intertwined with the work that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is also doing. Good morning, Zuwaira. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
We haven't seen you in a long while.
I know.
You've been hiding?
I was going to come in today, but apparently traffic has been a little bit challenging. So this is the next best thing.
Well, I'm hoping that the next time we'll have you will probably be through one of those youth innovation that can just port you from where you are to this studio. But that's right for another future conversation.
Yeah.
Perhaps to also, start by asking you, what's the significance of the partnership? I mean, of course, you've heard Aliko speak copiously about that. Your partnership with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What exactly do you do together?
So thank you really very much for that question. We've been working with the Gates Foundation for over 10 years now. And Aliko and Bill Gates have become really good friends. And I think the thing that bonds them together is this connection around philanthropy, right? And they both really believe that to whom much is given, much is required. And so, they've been working together for the past 10 years. In the beginning, around polio eradication and routine immunization. How do we make sure that more of our children are immunized? How do we make sure that we have more and better health outcomes for our children, that they have a chance to actually live? And so as we've, moved past polio, because wild polio, as we all know, is gone, we're still dealing with the after effects of the the vaccine-derived version, which is ending now because we have the appropriate vaccine. But really, it's around how do we improve primary care in general. And that includes maternal and child care, that includes malnutrition, that includes improving the state and the quality of our primary health care. So that's what we do together. A lot of the work that we've done in a really practical way has been around the 6 MOUs, the 6 states that we've signed MOUs with: Kano, Kaduna, Sokoto, Bauchi, Borno, Yobe. And what we've been doing in those states is really working hand in hand with us, the Gates Foundation, and the states. So the cost of immunizing the children is defined in a basket. And then once that cost is determined, the Gates Foundation puts in 35%, Aliko Dangote Foundation, we put in 35%, and the state puts in the remaining 30%. And that goes on a sliding scale for 4 years, at the end of which the state is fully responsible for their own basket of immunization funds. So we did that, and different states are at different levels of moving off of that. For instance, in Kano, 100% of their immunization needs are taken up by them. And so that work has now led us to doing similar MOUs with Chad as a country, and just recently Niger. So you saw that we also went with Bill Gates to Niger to have a look at what we're doing there, to meet with the president, meet with the different decision makers, the traditional rulers, who are a huge part of our work. So we've been working together. It's around health. How do we really develop this? We set up a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, we went with 12 state governors, Nigerian state governors, to Seattle, spent a couple of days there to really explore this whole primary healthcare space. And at the end of that, we all signed a Seattle Declaration. And that Seattle Declaration is really a commitment to improving and funding healthcare in their states. And we put together a leadership challenge fund. And at the event where the new governors were inducted a couple of weeks ago in Abuja, we unveiled the winners. And Borno State, for instance, was the best state, best performing on every level. And they won a $1.2 million prize. And so this is how we've been, working together with the Gates Foundation. I think that's a good summary. Also, just really important for us all to understand the role of our traditional leaders. We've been able to get them to break down the barriers, the fears, and the issues that people have around getting their children immunized. And that's how we've also been able to take some of the women who have been trained during the polio war, going door to door in the communities to get the children vaccinated. We're using them now to go and help us identify the zero-dose children. Zero dose means children who have not been immunized at all. And we still have some of those in Nigeria. And those women who we call CROWN, it's really a program called Community Reorientation Women's Network. And it's really about taking those trained women and using their skills to go back in the community and help us solve some of these problems. So they're helping us with zero-dose children. We just did a pilot with them in Bauchi, and they're also helping us with nutrition in Kano, where they're the ones who go in the houses door to door to identify the children. So that's a summary of what we've been doing with the Gates Foundation over the past few years.
Zuwaira, I like it that you mentioned the immunization now, because I was going to ask you, how has that work been? Because I know that in many areas in Nigeria, a lot of women do not want their children immunized. They have all kinds of myths about immunization. So how easy has it been for you in the area of immunization working with these states?
Madam Alero, you've got it right. The biggest obstacle is that women aren't necessarily comfortable taking their children to get immunized. If they don't know what it's for, if they haven't understood the benefit of immunizing their children, they're not necessarily interested in doing it. And that's where the traditional rulers come in. What we know is that people listen to their traditional and religious leader more than they would listen to, say, a government official who lives outside of their community, right? That's just the fact.
Yeah.
And so when we get them on board and they're the ones sharing why this is important, why you should take your children to get immunized, why you should, listen to what the health workers are saying to you, when we have the traditional leaders helping us with that particular component, the results are dramatically different. We've been able to literally compare a before and after the intervention of the traditional rulers, and the results are amazing. Once the local emir, sultan, chef de village or chef de canton in Niger and in Chad speaks up and says, look, this is what we have to do, people really listen. And it's not just talking to the mothers, right? Because the fathers also have to be on board. They also have to believe that this is important for their children. And so the work of the traditional leaders and traditional rulers can just not be overstated. Without them, there's no progress.
Pardon my being selfish. Nigeria is a big country, and we have a lot of healthcare issues. And yet your foundation decides to nip into Niger and nip into Chad and spread thin what you're offering to us. We own Aliko Dangote. He's a Nigerian. What are you doing in Niger and Chad?
No, so I mean, I'm laughing because I've heard this before, but here are the facts. The areas that are the most at risk for us in Nigeria are some of these northern states. That's just where the data takes us, right? So this is not a regional play. These are just the facts. Where do we have the most unimmunized children in Nigeria is in the north.
Okay.
And what happens, because we have a huge border between Niger and Nigeria, like 1,500 kilometer border, whatever happens in Nigeria gets thrown into Niger.
Yeah.
Same with Chad. So all the polio cases and all the, not all the diseases, but most of the epidemics that we get in Niger, for instance, are coming from Nigeria. If you look at the map, you'll see that, for instance, Yobe and Borno have a huge border with Niger. Katsina has a big border with Niger. Sokoto has a big border with Niger. And so these borders are just, remember that our countries were just drawn up in, by a pencil stroke somewhere in 1885, yes? So people aren't really living as if, okay, we're from Nigeria, so we're a different country, and we're in Niger, we're a different country. A lot of the border towns are just the same people mixed in.
Yeah.
So people from Yobe will go to a health center in Niger, for instance, and get treatment, and vice versa. So whatever efforts we make in Nigeria, if we don't do the same immediately on the other side of the border, we'll just delay us getting rid of some of these diseases. So those are just the facts, Alira. It's not at all about, we're spreading ourselves thin. On the contrary, we're trying to save ourselves and making sure that whatever work we do here in Niger and in Nigeria and in Chad is making sure that our Nigerian population is also okay. Because there's no way that we can, we're only working here in Nigeria and we don't care about what's going on the other sides of the border, but the same people are going up and down the border and reinfecting everybody if we don't have this full immunization. That's why it is so important for every child to be immunized. And we cannot have zero-dose children who have not been immunized at all growing up and moving about, because all that does is create new pockets of disease that we are not expecting. I'll tell you one last thing about immunization. Every time we see an epidemic of something, it's because children aren't vaccinated, right? There cannot be a measles outbreak except that people are not immunized. So that's why immunization is important. And we have to make sure that we're doing the same thing around us so that we are all safe.
Well, very, very huge concerns that you have raised there. Please do not blame us for asking, why are you going abroad when we still need you here? Meanwhile, still staying abroad, you've also had some intervention with Nigerian returnees from the war-torn Sudan. There's at least 2 countries between Nigeria and Sudan, but thankfully they are returnees. Not that you had to go all the way to Sudan. Tell us about that intervention with the Nigerian returnees from Sudan.
Okay, so, we have the third component of what we do at Aliko Dangote Foundation is humanitarian assistance. So really, when the returnees were coming back and there was all this, worry and stress about bringing our people back, we thought and agreed that immediately people came back home to Nigeria that we would help them. So we weren't involved in bringing people out of Sudan. It was the minute Nigerians landed in Nigeria, we were there in Abuja to help them. So from the first plane that landed until the last one a couple of weeks ago, we gave each returnee a backpack with all essential toiletries and 100,000 Naira cash grant to help them, go back to their village, go back to their town, have a little money on board. Because remember, people left with like the clothes on their back and maybe one piece of luggage. So they didn't have time to get ready to leave the Sudan. So we just wanted to make sure that when they came, there's a friendly face and something to support them when they came back. So we worked hand in hand with NEMA. We did the actual intervention ourselves. We bought the backpacks, bought the stuff that we put in the backpacks, blankets, soap, towels, etc., and then 100,000 Naira cash grant for each returnee.
Tell us about help me understand how you felt, particularly with that intervention. It's not the only one we've had. We've had Nigerians also return from Ukraine and a number of other situations like that. Tell us, how did you feel getting involved in that particular intervention. You've seen Nigerians return from a war-torn country like Sudan, like Ukraine, but speak to us about the one that's, your foundation had to intervene. How did you feel? How did it feel seeing those Nigerians in the situations that you just described?
So, of course, it was a heartbreaking situation for all of us, right? Just imagine being a student and you're just going to school studying, and then all of a sudden you have to flee. Or being a family and you're working there, and all of a sudden you have to leave. You have to leave everything, your bank accounts, your clothes, your house, everything, and just, run for your life. So it was heartbreaking just to know the hardship that people went through. What felt good to all of us in this intervention was being able to put a small little smile on their face when they came back. There was a lot of just disbelief. A lot of the reaction of the returnees was they were shocked. They didn't expect us to be there. They didn't know we were gonna, help them. They were just relieved to be back. So, they just kept asking, like, why are you doing this? Why are you helping us? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please say thank you to Aliko Dangote. We're so grateful. Thank you. Why do you care about us? And we're like, well, we care because you're our brothers and sisters, and all we want to do is, just extend a hand of friendship and just let you know that we care about you. So it felt good to be able to do something nice for, of course, people we don't know, but that we knew had gone through a very difficult time and had a not so clear, situation in front of them going forward. So I felt really good that we could help, that we could, provide some support and some relief to them.
Well, is that the kind of feedback you've also gotten from your work in Niger Republic, Chad, and other interventions? What kind of feedback have you gotten? What kind of reactions have you gotten from that as well? Sometimes, I ask that question because sometimes, particularly in the case of polio, I think Aliko mentioned that earlier, there is usually that pushback because people don't know what kind of intervention you're bringing, how it's going to affect them because of history and all those things. What kind of pushback or acceptance, feedback have you received with these interventions over the years?
So the feedback that we've gotten has been 100% thank you and well done and please do more. That's the feedback that we get. People trust Aliko Dangote because he's from here, right? When we go to Niger, he speaks Hausa. That's what, everybody in Niger speaks Hausa. So it's very easy and everybody knows about him in Africa. So they trust that he's there with good intent. I think that's the first thing that we're leading with is people trust that he's coming with good intentions. The reception has been gratefulness because we've had, like in Chad and in Niger, outbreaks that have come from these zero-dose children. The problem for us in Nigeria is that some of these outbreaks trickle back into Nigeria then, and that's where it highlights that we have children who aren't immunized. And so Chad and Niger have been very, grateful and thankful and, really appreciative of our efforts. Of course, every time, people see Alhaji Aliko, they want more money, they want investments, they want...
Isn't that to be expected?
Me, I'm on the foundation side. Right? We're working on health, education, and humanitarian. We're not doing business through the foundation. That's a different side of, Alhaji's life. But from the foundation side, it's really about helping specifically on health-related issues.
Well, still talking about helping, we know that you are also playing some role in the large-scale food fortification work in Nigeria. Tell us a little about that.
Okay. So if you can imagine, Aliko wears two hats, right? As an industrialist, a business person, and as the chairman of our foundation. So on the business side, we have food businesses that are involved in fortification. So Dangote Sugar, NASCON, which is our salt and seasoning company, all have been fortifying forever, right? And I mean, from the beginning, from inception. And so his interest on fortification lies there, that his own companies are doing the right thing when it comes to fortifying foods. And on the foundation side, we care about fortification because we have a big program on nutrition. And what happens is if people are eating, we're eating less and less traditional food. We're eating more bread. We're eating more processed foods. So we have to make sure that the food that we're eating that's processed is also properly fortified with the right vitamins and minerals. And so these two sides of his interest, if you will, came together. And so together with Bill Gates, who is also very interested in fortification and macronutrients, they set up something called the Strengthening African Food Producers Program. So it's a program that is run by TechnoServe. And what it does is it challenges all the food producers in Nigeria to properly fortify the food that they make for the Nigerian people. So in this forum that we've been doing, that we set up in 2018, we have the Nigerian regulators, so NAFDAC, SON, FCCPC, that are there to make sure that, we're doing what is required, Ministry of Trade and Industry and the Ministry of Health. All of our meetings since 2018 have been chaired by the Vice President of the Republic. And really, it was to highlight to the manufacturers of food, the producers of food, how important their role is in the health of Nigerians. And so out of all that came out the Microfortification Index, where companies are ranked. Is a self-regulated mechanism, and the results have been really impressive. I mean, 90% of fortification had been adhered to until pre-COVID. Now, COVID made it difficult because importing vitamin A had been reduced, because remember, everything was shut down, ports were shut down. A lot of the vitamin A doesn't survive being in the sun or being locked up for a long time. So, a lot of the investments that companies had made into fortifying had been lost because they couldn't, what they had bought, the vitamins they had bought and the premixes they had bought had lost their potency. So we had a bit of a dip with compliance, I would say, in the past year and a half, but then we're back up and all the companies are committed. We have an award ceremony now, and the winners get, a trophy, bragging rights. And I think it's this self-regulated mechanism that people understand we need to do, because people are eating our food, and if it's not properly fortified, we're doing them a disservice. Now, NAFDAC doesn't necessarily have the capacity to go and check every single loaf of bread and every single, bag of sugar, but they do the regular checks. And we've also, part of this SAPPF program also helps to strengthen the capacity of NAFDAC to enforce the fortification work. But this is what we've been doing for the past few years, and the results have been amazing. The industry is doing great. NASCON is the only one. I mean, 100% of our salt is fortified. So we're like 100% perfect on that. The bouillon cubes, seasoning cubes are being fortified also. Sugar is fortified. Edible oil is fortified. Flour.
Okay.
Okay. Seems...
Zuera, are you there? Zuera?
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Okay,
okay,
yes.
we can hear you now.
We can hear you now. Now,
right.
Just before you go, in parenthesis, Bill Gates is doing a lot of his work with young people, as we saw in the course of the week. And you are a partner to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Are you involved in the work that they're doing in any way with young people?
No, we're not. So the partnership that we have with them is really around the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Aliko Dangote Foundation. So Bill Gates is a person, also has several different investment vehicles and several different interests that are not connected to his foundation. So he has something called Breakthrough Ventures. He has all kinds of work that he does and investments that he makes that are not connected to the foundation. So we don't work with him on that part. We're really working specifically on the foundation side.
Okay. Zuera Yusufu, MD, CEO, Aliko Dangote Foundation. Thank you very much for coming to bring us up to scratch regarding what the foundation has been doing. We hope that you will come again in a not too distant future to further brief us regarding the work that the foundation is doing.
I would be happy to. Thank you so much for having me.
And we wish you all the best, Zuera Yusufu. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sunrise will be right back in just a moment to talk about the health of your gut. See you.